pretty good.
TeamConnect features and creative uses. My name is Regina Ide, and I'm Client Success Advisor here at Tech. And I have the pleasure of introducing your presenter this morning, Blair Bonema, who has been with us for, what was it, 3 years now, approximately?
2013.
2013, okay, well, you did math.
Math-ish.
Too early for me to do math. Blair is one of our trainers, and I can tell you honestly, he can train anyone because he trained me, and that's a challenge. He's also for daddy for 2 wonderful babies. He is an outdoor enthusiast and is going to be enjoying the Grand Canyon to recover from the last few days. And if we ask nicely, he might tell us some Star Wars stories. We'll leave it up to all this. Enjoy.
Cool. Thank you, Regina. It just dawned on me, I am wearing the same suit as in that. Didn't want you guys to have to reach too far. That is me. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about TeamConnect 5 today, just all the new features that came in the last couple of updates. We might sneak some 4.2 and 4.1 things in there as well that may be new to you if you're on a previous version 4 or 3. So we'll kind of wrap them all together. I'm going to go through them all, hopefully in a very easy kind of linked way, just to kind of create a story out of them. If you're in product, there's a big difference between UI and UX. So we kind of, for this release of TeamConnect 5, we distinguish these. For the end user, really, if you're thinking about rolling this out to your users or upgrading your current version of TeamConnect, users care less about this distinction. So as we go through, I'll point out which is which, but again, it's all kind of a big experience, trying to create a new interface for TeamConnect and a visual kind of overhaul. Towards the end, if you guys have any questions about upgrades and things like that, this is primarily a UI UX version of TeamConnect. There's no data structure changes, there's no API changes really. This is really kind of just a facelift on TeamConnect. The upgrade for this, if you're already on a 4, is less cumbersome, let's say, than if you're going from a 3 to a 4 version. The considerations are really visual. Are blocks going to maintain their integrity if we've made some custom data blocks and things like that? So we'll definitely answer those questions should you have them at the end. I have slides if you're interested afterwards to kind of capture all of these things. Since it is kind of a UI-focused thing, I don't really want to stay in PowerPoints. I'm sure you've seen enough of those this week. So this is going to be kind of a heavy demo. We'll walk through it. Stop me if you have questions. I'm happy to answer anything that you guys have. So I'm already logged in. So we'll start with the login screen. Oh. There we go. So we will start at the login screen. And this is just a new UX feature. If you don't have a single sign-on or an automatic sign-on, and you do use that standard authenticator, just a name and password, we've introduced this concept of people who forget their passwords and now don't have to contact their admin to have it reset. They can click on this link, forget my password, type in their username and their primary email address, and then it will send them a link to reset it. So just hopefully taking a little bit of burden off of the admins if you do use that standard authenticator. This is an option. You don't have to turn it on. So if you do have single sign-on and you don't want it to be available, or if you just don't like the feature, it's an admin feature that you can turn on and off. Cool. So this is TeamConnect 5, if you haven't seen it. We'll kind of go top to bottom, I think. It's kind of the most logical approach. But you'll already notice when you log in, the color scheme's a little different, the iconography is a little different, the global navigation across the top of the screen is going to be a little bit different. But not so much so that I think if you just were to upgrade and drop this on your users' desks, like on a Monday, that it's not so different that it would throw them a large curveball. So there are things that we would probably want to address before we roll it out to them, but we tried to keep the same themes, the same feeling of TeamConnect, so it's not just a complete change for our users that have possibly been using it for a while. So not a 5 feature, but new nonetheless to some of our newer 4.2 or 4.1 is that global search you see at the top. So that may be different for you. That is our Elasticsearch component, kind of the indexed searching. So we have it kind of in the top middle. It's really easy to use. Type in what you're looking for, and you can start searching through records. The other icons, however, we've kind of separated some functions out. You'll notice a new one called bookmarks, and this is going to be new for 5 specifically. And this is our ability to go to any record in TeamConnect and put a bookmark on it. If it's something important that I'm going to be working on all the time, I can just flag it, and it goes up into that queue, and I can easily get back to it. And I'll show you how we do that when we get into our Matter records. We still have our All menu, but tools are separated out. So if you do use the TeamConnect tools, whether they're custom to your environment or we have some out-of-the-box tools like time entry and so forth. Those are in their own menu. If I don't have any tool access, if we don't use tools in TeamConnect, that icon just disappears. Help and setup, of course, and then this is a little new. Our name and our user profile now has the preferences and the logout button nested underneath it. So a small change, but kind of congruent with the Google interface and other things that you log in and out of. So this bar, the gray bar that has all of our tabs across the top, will dynamically kind of change. So all of the UI and UX features kind of had in mind tablet use. And so as this screen shrinks, if I run out of real estate left to right, those will all collapse into a drop-down menu and just makes it a little easier and more visually pleasing for the users. So, and more to that point, if I look at something like this recent queue, everything is still click-based. And the reason we do that is hover-overs don't lend themselves well to mobile devices as much. So it's still touch input. If I'm going to go up to my recent items, I still have to click recent, and then I can tap on the screen, and those will slide in and out. So all of that has been kept in mind for TeamConnect 5, trying to be a little bit more mobile-friendly. There are some UI components that we probably don't need to talk about. It's more of as they all work together, it makes this new experience, but the font sizes, the coloring, all of that has been kind of overhauled in the stylings. Cool. So not starkly different, different enough. I'm about to click on the legal tab where all of our legal matters, disputes, transactions, advice and counsel live. And you will notice a slight change here. And I think this is probably maybe the biggest learning curve that someone would have to overcome coming from a previous version. And we no longer have a submenu in a separate color underneath that gray kind of master bar. We have our objects and our records nested here in their own drop-down menu. And so what this allows me to do actually is show you all of the features for a dispute, all those preloaded searches, the custom search for a dispute, and simultaneously, if I want to jump between record types, I can expand transactions, and I can go from, if I have a matter open, I can jump over to transactions. We try to make use of that left space just a little bit more. We no longer have the icons in the left-hand side, but if we do save our own searches using custom search, this is kind of the user's ability to run their own search. If they love it, they can save it, give it a name. I wasn't very creative when I created this, but it's called Safe Search. And so it gets its own kind of italicized and indented look so people can identify that. And then more to the point, some of the UI, UX enhancements, this iconography across the top, we've tried to make it a little more intuitive. We always had this feature, but the button was so small in previous versions, I don't think a lot of people found it. This icon here will just collapse that left-hand side, and you can make better use of the real estate if you're looking at a matter or so forth. This gear is how you manage what is in this left-hand pane. It's our manage search views function. So if I'd never used the matters pending assignment, I don't have to see it anymore. I can go and unsubscribe to it, and that's how we access it. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my break room snack complaint. And this is a legal matter in TeamConnect. And what you'll notice when I open up a matter now, I have what we call the object view or the breakdown of the matter on the top left. Down below it is still those custom searches and things like that for the matter or the disputes object itself. So I can jump from the matter, I can go into the sections of the matter, but I can also jump back to one of kind of my master searches. And then more to that point, I could scroll down and jump over to transactions or advice and counsel. So if you're looking at a matter and maybe you say, hey, this reminds me of a claim we have, you may have claims over there and you can kind of quickly jump back and forth. I'll minimize that to keep it simple. So I'm looking at my matter, and what we'll notice here is we have an Add Bookmark button, and this is true to every record in TeamConnect 5 now. And if I know I'm going to come back to this more than once, I may add a bookmark to it, and that's really all it does. It changes it to remove, and then it nests it here in this drop-down list. There's no technical limit to how many bookmarks you can have, but there might be a functional limit. So just keep that in mind. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and open this in edit mode, and you'll start to see some of the other UI components we've introduced that hopefully make your users' lives a little bit easier. My favorite being this one here. So we have lots of drop-down menus in TeamConnect, states, jurisdictions, working groups, whatever they might be that we've created. Before, I could hit T, and that's fine. It would take me down to Texas or Tennessee. But if we have a complex list, maybe cost centers, things of that nature, what we can do is we can start typing ahead in any drop-down list now in TeamConnect, and it'll start making suggestions from that list for me. So if I type in New Hampshire, New York, of course, and so I can go and select those. What we've also added is the ability just to use your arrow keys and go down. So if you're doing some data entry and things like that, just makes everything a little bit faster. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask if that's limited to pick lists or if you use that same feature. So if I'm like creating an involved party or something and I'm trying to contact with.
That functionality still remains. That custom field for an involved party is what we call a custom object field. It's got the little spyglass next to it. If you type ahead in there, it will make suggestions based on the search that you've linked. It'll make the first 10 suggestions is what I warn people during training, that it's not everything it thinks it should be, but it's the first 10 best. This is really for lookup tables, other lists that the system has. Yes.
Okay, so you can actually go to the parent and see the children underneath it.
Yes. Yeah. So a lot of times we have these kind of indented lists, right? We have the Texas, and then maybe indented is Austin, Dallas, Houston. If we just, it'll work. It basically makes suggestions out of the list. We have a multi-select field, which is different than the list field. And so you would have to create a... Yeah. So you'd still have to utilize that multi-select field and change that field type. Another small UI UX enhancement is the concept of this primary category. In TeamConnect, we'd love to categorize everything: documents, contact cards, appointments, tasks, matters, of course. What type of matter is this? This is my break room snacks complaint, so it's categorized as a complaint or claim. Before, there was this little green circle next to all of these, and a lot of people said it was kind of confusing for their users, especially first-time users. What is this green checkbox? So what this does now is there's a separate list here. Based on my selections in this pick list of categories, this list will be populated. So if somehow this is a lawsuit and claim, if we go over here and look at the drop-down list, it just populates with what I have selected here. And this is our concept of a primary designation. Yes, it's a complaint, but primarily maybe it's a lawsuit or vice versa.
Is that true? Is that used also on contact cards in addition to the legal matter?
Yeah, This system category screen, it's a system block that comes with Enterprise, has just been modified across the board. So all of the records. Mhm.
Anything that the category thing before will now have.
Yes. It's, no, we don't. I've never, that question actually hasn't come up if we could somehow keep the green thing. We did, yeah, we mulled this one over quite a bit. We do have clients that don't use primary category because it's difficult for their users to consider what is primary across the board. This seemed in the short term, I guess, probably the best way to do it, to separate it out. But I might follow up for you on that one just to see if we have any folks.
You know, when you're filling in a contact card and you have multiple email addresses, you can select one as your primary.
Mm-hmm.
Is that changed as well? Where is that on?
Yeah, that still has like a little radial button next to them. And I'll show you another feature that we've added for things like that, kind of reorganizing those a little bit more.
Does the reporting on this change? So if you're going to report from any category in the list versus primary, it's still the same on the back end?
Yeah, yeah. TeamConnect knows that as default category. Any rules you have around it, it's just a UI. This is how you do it now, kind of thing. Want to leave out anything? So those are two minor, just kind of UI UX enhancements and data entry. Probably one of the bigger things here, if I go over to this Documents tab, is this Documents interface. And if you've attended some of Matt's sessions with the document integration, this will make your users' lives a little bit easier than before. Documents in TeamConnect have always been a little bit mechanical. You know, we click the upload button, we go search on our desktop or search through our file browser and go select it and then upload it. So this box here, I can click and drag multiple files from my desktop or otherwise into TeamConnect. So I'm going to try to do a little side-by-side here with my messy desktop on the training laptop here. So if I have a couple of things that I need to get into TeamConnect, probably not that one. I can click and drag those over. And it's going to hold them there as placeholders. And when I hit Start Upload, it's still going to prompt me for that metadata screen. How do you want to categorize this? Or do you want to give any comments? So when I hit Start Upload, here's my Google Chrome link. I can categorize that one, call it a link, and hit Upload. It'll let me know in the background that it's uploading it, and it'll say Document Uploaded, and it'll move me on to my next one. So we're still prompting the users for that metadata. Hopefully they're good about putting categories on these things. And if I kind of move through them, oops.
And that's also available in contact cards?
Again, so I'm going to cancel this just to show you the update. It says 2 were successful and 1 wasn't. So if there was an error, the file type that we don't allow into TeamConnect, it'll let the user know that one of them was unsuccessful. But yes, this is the enterprise document screen now. This is across the board. Anytime we use the document interface, this functionality would be available.
And those are saving within the TeamConnect database, unless you have some other document repository behind the scenes.
Yeah, so as it is, this is just TeamConnect documents. If you've attended some of Matt's sessions with the kind of the document integration, yeah, it would be upload them all and then take them somewhere else. Or, it's based on the TeamConnect settings of how big of a file that you can upload. So there's really no functional limit, I guess, what makes sense to drag over, but it's still going to check each individual file for that max that we allow.
And what about is there a mass indicator that pull out? You can't click, drag, and drop out?
If they're already uploaded, they'll be in this list like we're used to, and we still need to actually go into the document and delete them or remove them. If they're in that queue, you can exit, so it's not a part of your batch upload. So if you accidentally grabbed a bunch of files on your desktop and you're like, oh, I didn't need these 3, you can, yeah.
And what if you wanted to download multiple documents at one time? So let's say you entirely want to have 5 documents
No, this is just for upload right now. Any other questions on the document drag and drop? Cool. Let's see. So we'll go back to our matter here. And just to kind of demonstrate, oh, go ahead.
Can you email from TeamConnect now?
The documents?
Yeah.
No. So we'll go back to our matter, just to kind of demonstrate. I'm looking at my disputes here, my list of disputes. If I want to jump over to transactions, I can just using that left nav, even if I'm in a matter record or a contact record, whatever it might be. As long as it's in that left nav, I can jump kind of objects this way. And let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to jump over to a custom search for transactions just to show you. I like this feature. It's a little frustrating to go build a custom search and then not be able to jump these. So we added in these plus and minuses and these up and down arrows. So for those users that rely on custom search a lot, creating a search, building out what they want in their results. Now instead of moving things manually by reselecting, we just have these little arrow buttons and they can move those columns around and readjust those. So just wanted to point that one out. It's yeah, a lot of these are just kind of really good, common sense, quick wins, not a huge change for the user, but if they stumbled upon this, it's fairly intuitive. Oh, I have this now, and we move on. So again, that's kind of the idea behind TeamConnect 5. We wanted to give it a facelift, but we didn't want to change it so much that they would have to relearn the application. And I'm going to go to invoices now, just because I have some kind of preloaded examples of some of the other UI, UX features. So a big one for us is this hover over window. And this is true for any link that you see in the system. For invoices, contact cards, any object you have, there is a search view that controls what shows up in this window now. Absolutely. It's tied to a search view. That's the reaction I like to see. I told the folks on Monday, yes, I told the folks on Monday who were in training, every time I trained on a previous version that we didn't have this, people said, hey, is that drop down customizable? My answer was always no. Now that we have it, nobody asked me about it. But I try to point it out and really make them think about it. So if you think about something like an invoice that I have up right now, it's controlled by a search view. And if you're unfamiliar with search views are what we can build as admins to pull in data from linked records. So if I have an invoice, it is tied to a matter record. And in a search view, I can say, here's the invoice, here's the matter it's attached to, here's the outside counsel. TeamConnect loves to link things together, and search views are an admin way of getting that data all on one screen. What I've built here is kind of an example. So we have a lot going on in this box, and I'll do my best to dissect everything going on here. So if you look at this hover over, by default, it's going to have the invoice number in the hover over. The workflow status and the current approver are actually new items that we made available in TeamConnect 4. Who is the invoice pending approval? What was the last action? Things like that. So those are just kind of new things in TeamConnect 4. We see the vendor, we see the invoice date, and then what I have now is a breakdown of the fees and expenses and then the total. So they get a little bit more information about the invoice than just hovering over and seeing the total like before. The matter as well that the invoice is tied to. So that is actually linked on the invoice. And then I've actually gone into the matter and pulled out information about the matter. So the main assignee or the cost center perhaps that's on there. Anything on the matter record or anything tied to it, we can have in this hover over now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it uses a search view. Like if I were to go build one of these for my user and add the columns, it just kind of hijacks the results display of that search view. And every object, you can go object by object and build what you want for that. So.
Is there a limit toggle or in the hover?
Not technically, functionally speaking. I have returned the matter description, which is a large memo text field, and this box takes up the screen. So it's probably worth playing with, but whatever your users, seem to gravitate towards. And a lot of search views just by default will have the vendor for the invoice, and that makes sense to have in a column, but breakdown of fees and expenses or anything else that when they're going through a list of things that maybe they need to approve would make sense just where they can.
So you have hover over box here, and the reason I'm asking is because I've seen this feature where you can edit within that.
No. Yeah. Suggestion box. You can use the same search view if you'd like. So without getting too admin-y, I'll just show you. I think visually it'll make sense. This is kind of behind the scenes of TeamConnect. These are all of our objects, correct? So if we go to Invoices, on my Search Views tab, at the very bottom we have 2 new items. I created a search view called Hover Over, so we have this item here that says, what search view do you want to use for that Hover Over pop-up? The top one that you're asking about is the one that Global Search will use, and I think we'll have enough time I can go back and go through Global Search too for those folks who haven't seen it. So it's really just hijacking the results display of one of your search views. And then for the end user, if they do have things to approve, if you're familiar with kind of our approval queue, there's a lot of ways to get to it, but I'm just going to go to it kind of manually here. Sure.
In the pop-up, if there's a field that you're exposing to the search view and it's a secured field, that person can't see it, you just see secure in the pop-up.
Yeah, security still applies, cannot see it, and I'll talk about security as well maybe at the end because it's not as fun as all of these things. But this is our approval queue. So this is what a user might go to if they have things to approve, like this one invoice of mine. It'll tell me I have warnings on it. That's great. We can build a search view to add columns to this as well. That actually came in TeamConnect 4 as well. So we can add columns here, but if you think about, if I have 20 invoices to approve, it might be nice just to hover over it and see that information without diving into each one. Trying to remove clicks, one release at a time, just trying to make it more streamlined. So lots of control there, and that is true, like I said. Any link in the system, if I do go to the invoice, and I open it up manually, there's a link here for that matter, and I have another custom one for the matter that's a little bit different. I think I created this with the group on Monday, but you can see again, we have the primary category of the matter, the main assignee, a hybrid of myself and Brad somehow. And then if I wanted to, I could pull in that main assignee's birthday, things on their contact card. So those, again, those related records. So the hover box itself is system functionality. Every link in the system has a hover box. Previous versions, it was pretty much what TeamConnect gave you, what was in that box. For a contact card, it was basic contact information. For an invoice, it was basic. The admin side of TeamConnect is this bluish screen here. And every piece of TeamConnect, the invoice object, the dispute object, all has this kind of dashboard where you can go in and start creating new content. We call these search views, and this is where we go in and we actually build a search view and tie it to that functionality. Cool. And so I opened this invoice for a reason. There's one more UI, kind of UX enhancement that I just wanted to review with you guys, and then we'll talk about maybe global search and custom search a little bit and how it's kind of advanced from 4 to 5. So we might be familiar with line item warnings already. That means we have 19 line items on this invoice that probably are worth looking at. And if I scroll down here, you'll notice some visual components that we didn't have before. So invoice comes in, our system rules run and say, hey, that rate that we have on file for Bernard Nelson is a little high, 350. We have on file 325. And we have this rule here that I have it set to auto-adjust down to what we've agreed on. And so now in TeamConnect, there's a visual designation on was this automatically adjusted by our system, and was it manually adjusted by a human being? So we can start to see what are our users actually doing, and what is the system doing. We can also report on those. Those are tags that each line item gets. So if you wanted to run a report and say, well, out of all my line items this month, how many did my users catch and how many are the system catching? You get an idea of maybe vendors that always submit things over rates and things like that. So these two designations, this will not read the line item back to you. So just, it's just a little, I think it's like a bullhorn saying your user manually edited this. If I expand this out, we've always had this function. You know, we have a lot of attorneys maybe looking at this invoice and making adjustments if we allow them to. And in this case, the first adjustment that was made when the invoice was created was through the system function. A rule ran and said, these rates don't match up, we're going to reduce it. And then my hybrid user here between Brad and myself logged in and said, well, we're going to actually adjust the rate down to 175 for this. We have this new total. So it's always going to log a history of what adjustments have been made and by whom. We have two new features, though, to help users kind of do this a little bit quicker or roll back changes if they don't agree with them. So I'm going to do the first one on the line item below it. And I'm just going to check this one. Let's say this whole line item is a duplicate, and I want to remove it. Instead of making an adjustment for the line item total, what I can do is I can select the line item, go up here, and just click the reject button. It's still going to prompt me for the reason. And I can make my comments back to the vendor and in-house and then reject. And what this does, it just zeroes out that selected line item. So if I scroll back down, it gives it this rejected tag, so we can visualize that, and it'll zero it out. So it's just a quick way of going through and identifying line items that we don't want to pay for, essentially.
So that gets sent back via collateral to the vendor once the invoice is approved and posted and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So same functionality as far as comments go. If we've made comments here and we approve a different invoice than what they submitted, they'll still get that approved copy. If we make adjustments and reject it, same thing. So. Yes. So that was my audience planted question here. So we see that same spyglass functionality pop up for this dropdown. This is actually a dropdown that you are able to edit as an admin. So this seems like a long list for me, but if you just wanted to give your staff, you know, a quick 10, this is the reason why we rejected it. So they can just select it instead of typing it out every time. They can also type ahead now in this list as well and get to that faster. So I think we have something like a capped fee. If I type in capped fee, it'll pull that list up. The comment? Yeah, so, oh. Yes. So if you wanted to, the question is, can I report on these comments why we're rejecting these line items? So my guess is you'd like to see why we're adjusting all of these line items. Yeah. So you should be able to pull back these comments as well. So these tags, is it manual or auto? Great. The comments as well. Any information we're putting in there. No. Yeah, the adjustment data lives, and I'm sorry, thank you for the clarification. The adjustment data lives almost like an embedded object, so I can't point to just one or all of them. It would have to be through probably a separate tool, but it does exist there and it is exposed for you.
Can you do, let's say we get a lot where they go to the wrong matter number, can you do a lot of line rejections at the same time and give you the same reason why?
Yes. Yeah, so if you select all of these, or you can click the top one and it'll just go down and select all of them. If you hit reject, it'll reject all of those with the same comment.
We're going to go back to the other question just really quickly.
Sure.
So the line item detail itself is not sitting in the same place on the back end as the invoice detail. It's like a embedded object or a child object of the invoice, right?
each line item is actually its own child object of the invoice, so it has its own.
So from a searching perspective, I will not going to be able to grab the detail on a search. You're going to have business objects or some other reporting capability available for that detail, right?
What are you searching on the line item, I guess, is the question.
You were mentioning earlier the reason for the rejection of the line item. So that lookup table that you had, so if I wanted to know how many were adjusted because it was an AFA,
Sure.
can that be done line item by line item in a search?
So that is a good jumping off point to Elasticsearch and what is indexed and what isn't, and related records and what is. I will, yeah, I'll get to it here in a second. Hold that thought. I just wanted to show you guys real quick this kind of rollback feature. So if we do have an invoice with many adjustments, 1 or 2 here, or maybe 10, and I say, well, I don't agree with the last 5, let's roll it back to a point in time. What I can do is expand those adjustments, and I can select one. And if I select the last one, it'll just select it. If I select the very first one, it'll go ahead and select everything. So you're kind of going and saying, well, I agree with the system adjustment down, but I don't agree with Blair's adjustment to 175. So if I select that and hit revert, it'll bring this up. Again, reason for adjustment, why are you removing this? And if we save it, it'll still have the original adjustment, but it'll strike it through. So you can see who made what adjustment. So I went back and undid his, or my previous one, so people can start visualizing what's going on this invoice.
Will that be captured for reporting later on?
So
That action that you, that some subsequent reviewer undid a previous adjustment?
not currently. So all of these things, and this might be another jumping off point if you've attended Karen's report item yesterday, all of these things are really important to people because this is where you can kind of see who's actually doing their adjustments and things like that. So we're trying to make it a part of that semantic layer that she spoke of, kind of actually, I would like rates in there so we can report on rates that we have on file. All of this kind of metadata behind the scenes, that's a big point of pain for me personally. I like to be able to do that for people, so we're trying to get people in that working group to make it available for the Sisense rollout. But currently, I can't point to it. Now, Elasticsearch does go to related records if we allow it to. And so if we're doing a global search in the top on invoices for a rate-adjusted reason or something like that, if we allow and have the admin setting to allow Elasticsearch to go into related records, then that is something that you could feasibly say, I want to see an invoice that has this particular reason or comment on it, and it should pick that up as well. So I'll talk about Elasticsearch, and then we'll revisit those questions. But any questions over just the basic functionality of rolling these back, or the tags that we have, or the revert line item or reject? Okay. So if you're on an older version of TeamConnect 4 and below, this Elasticsearch is going to be kind of a new looking thing for you. And let me just go to contacts, and I'll do a triple wildcard search, which is 3 asterisks, and it should pull back all 4,500 records that I have pretty quickly. If you're familiar with our search before, it was pretty brute force method of finding those records. We didn't have anything quite like that wildcard operator. And so this is the Elasticsearch component, of course, and then the results look a little bit different. And to Amy's question earlier, this is also controlled by a search view. So that hover over that we saw and what we can put in there, our admins can also control what shows up in our results for the global search. So there's a lot going on actually in this global search. The content of our system is indexed. If we use TeamConnect documents, the content of those documents is indexed as well. So it will do content search on documents. And what we see, I did a triple wildcard, so I just pulled back every contact card in the system that we have. And now it's asking me, well, what category do you want to see? Do you want to see the 44 experts? Do you want to see the 78 physicians we have in here? And so now my users can go in and start kind of dwindling their results down. So I would say that Elasticsearch is casts a really wide net originally, and then the user can kind of pull it back in a couple of different ways. So if I do just want to see the 44 experts, I can click that and hit apply. And then I'm just seeing those 44 cards. So I bring up security just briefly. We introduced field level security in 4.2. And with this component, we also released some security concerns. So you'll notice it's telling me that there are 44 experts or physicians, experts in the system. There's two ways that this can behave. There's we found 44, and here's the 44 that you can see, or maybe I'm locked out of 5 contact cards for experts. There's another way that this could behave, and it says, hey, we found 49, but here's the 44 that you can see. And there's kind of just a difference of opinion on how they want that, how clients need that to work for their users. Some people take the position, if they're locked out of it, they don't need to know it exists, which is probably the bigger or the more common one. But then we do have it where you can leave it alone, and it will give you that kind of what I would call inference data that I can infer that now there are records that I don't have access to. And more to the point of the line item invoice relationship, that related object, if you think about a legal matter or a contact card, this contact card is probably related to, assignees elsewhere. If you think about a vendor, they have tons of invoices that they're tied to now. We can break that link. And so if I run a search on contacts, it just searches through the fields on a contact card. Or we can allow it to go in and search in those related records as well. So that's a admin consideration, and kind of the use case for that is, let's say I stumble upon in the office a code name that I think is maybe a secret matter, just around the water cooler or something, and I go and I type it in, and it says, we found one match, but you don't see anything on this screen. So now you know it's in TeamConnect, essentially, or something with that name at least. If I allow it to search through related records, it might say, we found a matter that you can't see, but we also found 20 invoices that you can't see. So now you kind of get an idea of how big it is or things like that. So those we can break, so we can't get that kind of meta or inference data through the global search. Sure.
So if I do a wildcard, so the wildcard retrieves 1.5 million records, how does that work? Does it say you have 1.5 million records and it only displays the first 1 year?
I haven't.
That's what you can get right.
So that was part of the plan. So let me answer your question in 2 ways here. So there is a global indexing tool, and this is where I go in and I say, I want this record to be indexed, I don't want this one to be indexed, and I don't need, and actually at the custom field level, we can take them out of global search as well. If there is a custom field like social security number that doesn't need to be a part of our indexing scheme, then we can go at the custom field level and turn it off so it doesn't hit back. To Tony's question, what is the upper limit? We've done probably load testing with around 1 million records. It's a little bit dependent on the hardware, the Elasticsearch background, but there is no more limit, and I'm just going to go back to my contact cards. I haven't indexed everything, so. As far as what it tells you it found. So in previous searches, there's an admin setting to say, only return 1,000 or 2,000 or 500. And really, those features were designed around trying to put some barriers on it so they didn't just run a massive search for Smith across all projects, and now the system's chugging, trying to do it. So those admin settings are irrelevant for this global search now. It still adheres to custom search, my upper limit for custom search and things like that. But for this, you'll notice my admin setting in here is actually 1,000. And it says, well, we found 4,500 essentially. So it'll always show you as many as it can find as far as the number. Actual data is what you probably want. I'll see if we have anything as far as load testing. I know we did quite a bit. But the nice thing also about this is that it knows where these records are. So yes, it shows me that I have 92 pages to kind of thumb through, right? But if I click on 4, it's no longer loading 1 through 3 and then showing me 4. It's just going to those results that it knows are in 4. Likewise, if I click on 92, it just jumps me over to those people that are on 92. Yeah. Yeah, with the that is a very good point. So,
Two much is almost as bad as not enough, right?
uh,
Too much is as bad as not enough.
Because it also doesn't show you what was
Why in
why it
particular?
had
Yeah.
it. So you might have something out in the description field, and so you have no idea why this matters. And
Even
then
got returned to you, yeah.
So I do have a list of all the fields that are indexed out of the box. So if you use TeamConnect Legal, the custom fields, and then all of the system fields that are indexed, and those you can't turn off. What I have up here on the screen is just a custom field for incorporation locale. And there's a new, when we build a custom field, there's one more consideration now, and it's, do I want this to be in global search or not? So by default, I will say if you do upgrade, these are all set to exclude no, so they're all going to be included. And it is an exercise to actually go through and say, well, what do we need to be a part of global search?
You can change that. Is that a parameter that you can change after the field's been created, or do you have to recreate the field without that consideration?
You can, this is editable after the fact. What you would want to do at that point is go probably clear your indexes with that admin tool I showed you, and then re-index it according to your new settings. I think we have enough time just to talk about another item, and it kind of ties into this, which this is a 4.2 feature of field level security, but this has come up quite a bit, and this is this concept of blocking people from even seeing that fields exist while I'm using custom search. And it's very specific. So I'll try to give you a scenario. If I'm running a custom search, let's say I'll bring up contact cards. And let's say as a company, we do have a field for social security number, but we only really need maybe 2 people to be able to see it. It would be nice if my users didn't even know that it existed. And so in previous versions of TeamConnect prior to 4.2, we couldn't do that. It was either, a field was either available in custom search or it wasn't. Now, what we can do with field level security in their security profile, I can point to a user and say, he or she doesn't have access to this field. And there's a setting now that says, this drop-down list adheres to that security profile. So if you have maybe 2 different regional groups, let's say Brazil and the US, and the folks in Brazil have a handful of fields that they use all the time that really are just relevant to them, we can bar our US staff from seeing those and also clean this up, because it can get really confusing. You know, it might be a security concern that you don't want them to know that field is there, but also just might be a use interface issue where it's just kind of cluttered with all these really unique fields. So that is a security component that was introduced. We've always been able to say, yes, you can see matters. You can only see the details of bankruptcy. Now you can go down to the specific fields, and you can turn individual fields on and off for people.
You can do that with any security role. So let's say, I'm asking, I'm not saying. So if I had a group, so if I had 2 groups that had access to matters or projects, and I had a certain field that only one group or one role, let's say our security's role based, I want the attorneys to see it, the paralegals and admins not to see it, I can actually set the security on that field based on that group. Security group is what you're saying, right?
It's all, so it's a part of our, and let me just pull it up so we can poke at something and talk about it. So this is the new category rights screen as far as security profiles go. Can I view the contact category or the external? Can I add that category, as in I can make a contact card like that? Can I remove those? What we have over here now is this little drop down, and that's a custom field that I put into the system. Can they view it? Can they edit it? So it might just be that they can view the data and they can't, or they can't edit it. This is a security group, so any user that belongs to this would have these rights. It's a rights across the board thing. So by itself, it can be a lot to manage, I think, just because it's another level of granularity. But what it really allows you to do is further silo people from each other if that is the need.
We're in a older version of TeamConnect. We actually had to have custom rules and custom fields built to mask social security number, driver's license number, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
This would allow us to have only those folks that need that information to have access to it field by field rather than creating rules and
Yeah.
fields that
I will tell you this. This is for custom fields. If you're using the social security number, that's the system field. That one's off. But you could push it all into a custom field. There's other ways to use this a little more, but that is a new feature. I did want to end here on something a little bit more fun. So I'm going to go up to my personal preferences. This is where a user gets to select their email, choices, and in previous versions of TeamConnect, I think we gave you 14 or 16 different color profiles to choose from: cyan and magenta and UT burnt orange. I don't know if there was any rhyme or reason. It was just kind of what we felt you might like. So the big one for me, actually, and now that I go back to other systems and we don't have this in previous versions, is when I go to a record and I open it in edit mode, what is my default save option and what is my default cancel option? Is it save and view? Is it save and close? It seems like a small feature. However, I absolutely love that one because everybody seems to have a different preference. We can push out the same preference to everyone at the start, and then they can come into their personal and change it. So subtle change, but important nonetheless. The other one now is this concept of color schemes. We're in Phoenix, so I made one called Canyon Sunset. Half the fun is naming them. But what we can do now is pretty much edit all of the colors that you see on the screen. And in 5.0.2, you can actually edit this background color as well. There are some best practices to color. This is a little aggressive. Yeah. I can show you my high contrast one as well, which is awful neon greens for our day glow theme, but I don't think I have it in this one. What we have seen, though, is that it can clean up the interface a little bit, and I'll show you this one. This one is called Snowstorm. But what I've done in this one, I've just removed the block background. Everything kind of is a little bit cleaner. And really the advantage of this, it takes hex color codes, so your company colors that you have from marketing. I know our marketing team gives those to us on a regular basis, so all of our material looks the same and so forth. Really just making the system feel like it's yours or the users, and they can identify with it a little bit more. So pretty much everything you see on the screen is an editable field. There's about 27 of them. The border color around the boxes, the box background, that gray across the top is a color. The lines, the icons, the hover over. You'll become a small UI, UX guru trying to manipulate these and see what all goes into actually making this interface. But it's a fairly easy text file to edit. You just kind of put your color codes in. I have a tutorial that, if you're interested, I can send out to everyone. Basically, here's the code in the file, here's what it manipulates, so you can kind of visualize what you're doing. So there is an element of now kind of customizing TeamConnect just a little bit more than what we once could. And we'll go back to our Canyon. I tried, but I think I missed the mark on this one. So high color contrast things, maybe for people with vision impairments, is important. Red, green, vision impairments, and of course, your own company colors. So that is a quick overview of everything. Do we have any questions over anything that we covered? It's actually a text file, and I'll show you where we upload them. It's now under admin settings, and it's this upload new color profile. It's a text file. We save it as a .less file, and then when you upload it here, it goes and creates the CSS out of it, and then now it's a new option. So before, your users could pick from 16. Now it's just up to the admins to go build those color profiles, and then the users can choose from them.
So right now, the order of objects in searching, the objects are ordered in a certain way. There's a default order to those.
Are you talking about lists like this where all the objects appear together?
So let's say I decide I'm going to search, on the legal tab, I'm going to search a particular object.
Mhm.
So when I'm looking for objects like the project, so we have two objects. We use the transaction and the
Disputes,
dispute. Thank you.
matters.
So disputes and transactions. And so you can change which one is the default first one to show up to search on, but it changes it for all users. It's a system change. It's not visual to a security group. So let's say you have one group using matters or the transaction, and you have one group using disputes. I'd like disputes to be first for that group, and matters or transaction to be first for that group. But I can change the order, but it's system-wide.
Are you talking about the navigation access or?
No, so in a search, yeah, we can take it offline.
Yeah. Sure, I'd be.
When I'm searching for like on the matter tab, on the legal tab,
Mhm.
and I do a search, it's going to default to whatever that first one is, the first object is in the list. I can show you what it's talking
Yeah, I have a.
about.
No worries. Yeah, we can definitely take it offline. But my hunch is no. The order of the objects is still pretty rigid. We don't have anything tied to security, but there might be ways through the UI that we could probably do that. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, please let me know.